Hello, and welcome to a very special live event celebrating season 2 of the Hallmark Channel's The Way Home. And this is, it's ladies' afternoon here at Club Pond is all I have to say because
Club Pond.
we're rocking it. We're rocking it today with Chyler Leigh, who plays Kat. We have the amazing Sadie Laflamme-Snow, who plays Alice. And we have Y2 Cat. That's what I'm calling Y2. Hi, guys. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having us again. We love you, Breanne.
Oh,
we do.
Well, thanks, guys. That feels so nice. It's been a minute since we last saw you, Alex. So welcome back.
Thank you.
I have to ask, were you a little nervous at the end of last season that we weren't going to come back to the year 2000 and get to see you?
You know what? I think part of me, yes, of course. Like I mean, I can't sit here and say that I wasn't a little bit nervous. But I sort of remember thinking about the thought of, okay, so she might never come back. She might never see you again. And I feel like my only option at that point was to really just accept that maybe the storyline in the 90s is done. And there's only so much that I can do. And like maybe sometimes your character needs to end in order for the rest of the story to progress. And that's okay. So I remember kind of thinking of it in that sense. And I was still really excited to see where the story went, regardless of if there's 90s or no 90s. So you kind of just take what you can get and keep moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Chyler, is it a little weird, like being on one of these sorts of things with your doppelganger?
Oh, you know what? I will say, when I was on Supergirl, I had a teenage version of myself. So this is actually like so amazing to see the fact that I am doubleable. And I get to relive my youth with these young, beautiful women. And I get to just see how wild and weird I am, because if they're trying to pick pieces of me as a person, then God help this world if I were to be doubled and or tripled.
I think the world would be a better place. Do you agree, Sadie?
I agree. I agree completely.
We could use more Chylers in this world. I'm here for it. So Sadie, I mean, Alice at the end of the last season too, it seemed like she probably wasn't going back to 2000, and now she gets to, but she tried to go with her mom and couldn't. What was that reaction for you when you saw the scripts and saw that that you were getting to go back to that time period, but also you were not getting to go with Kat?
Well, I think, we see at the end of episode 3 that Elliot gives Alice this kind of warning, which gives you the feeling of like, okay, this is why maybe I have to go back here, even if maybe I don't want to, or maybe my mom or Elliot don't want me to.
Okay, so we've had to wait a whole week because of that ball game. I don't know.
Something happens. I don't know.
So I feel like we need to kind of have a little catch up and go back to where we left off. And in episode 3, we met a handful of new characters, which was really exciting. We met Casey Goodwin, the grandchild of Evelyn Goodwin, who is going to be interning with Kat. Chyler, do you want to tell us a little bit about what that dynamic is going to be like?
Well, Vaughn, who plays Casey, is absolutely lovely. Like, they bring such an incredible dynamic to the show of that youth, but it in such a different way that complements, Alice as well. And there's like this strange little, I don't know what their connection is yet, but really, truly. We see that Vaughn is absolutely fascinated with Alice, which is great, because I can't wait to find out what that means. But for Vaughn to come into Kat's world in that sense, I mean, honestly, like, they bring a freshness, just a whole new level of mystery, and like, giving the audience a whole nother reason to like ask a whole new set of questions of like, what is going on? What is their deal? And you know, Vaughn as just an amazing human being. It's been such a wonderful journey with them to kind of get excited about what we do for a living all over again, you know, just to see that vibrance and that enthusiasm. And it reminds me sometimes too, to just go, okay, Chyler, like, take a breath. You know what I mean? Like chill a little bit, and prepare your dialogue a whole lot more, Chyler. I know that you are exhausted, but girl, they've been keeping me in check, which I really appreciate. Yeah, it's been a great journey so far.
Well, that's awesome. You brought up the dynamic between Alice and Casey, and it's definitely a little awkward in episode 3. It feels like maybe there's even some jealousy there. Sadie, what can you tell us about what that's going to look like?
Well, I think in a lot of ways, Alice is finding that she doesn't really know what her purpose is, because her mom's back in the 1800s. She keeps getting sent back to the 2000s, like the early 2000s, and like having these really hard conversations that don't really get her anywhere. And she keeps thinking like, oh, it's going to fix my relationship with Elliot. It's going to fix my relationship with my mom. It's like, or whatever. And she keeps thinking like, okay, what is going on here? So when she finally decides, okay, you know what, I'm staying in Port Haven. My purpose is to take care of Dell and make sure that she's okay. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to get a job like Dell wants. She wants me to like, you know, do something with my time and not just like chase her around and bother her about the farm. She tries to do that, and there's Casey in her way. And I think that's kind of hard for Alice. I think she feels like Casey's kind of stepping on her toes a little, getting in there and taking the internship that she thought she was a shoo-in for, because, I mean, it's her mom. And then she used to go work at the Point, and it couldn't be, like, you know, Alice she's a lovely girl, but she has her kind of, like, spiky side to her, and I don't think customer service is maybe, like, her place to shine.
I love you say spiky that, and not like spicy. You said spiky.
No, spiky, like she's like a cactus. Like you know, we knew that part of her at the beginning of season 1. We saw her being like really sassy and difficult. We see it with her and Elliot. She's really like, he's really in the doghouse, the way Alice sees it at the beginning of season 2. But I think, you know, then she goes and she has to get this job that she doesn't want. And then on top of that, then, you know, there's maybe boys at the restaurant, at the cafe, and maybe that's embarrassing and awkward. And then on top of it all, Casey's there causing more issues. So I think Alice is not in a good way. She's mad. She thought she was going to have a magical Port Haven summer, and then she ends up with not really sure what her time travel mission is until maybe the end of episode 3. And then also on top of that, with like just not the summer she thought she was going to have.
Yeah. It's so relatable as someone who has waited tables at some point. Like,
oh, absolutely.
The spilling, all of it. And it was a nice comedic break too, I think. So I have to ask, have any of the 3 of you ever waited tables?
I have.
I've never waited tables, but I've worked at a restaurant, and I know just how tricky and complicated hospitality could be, especially if you're not working with happy customers, and yet they're always right. The customer is always right, even when they're not, they're right.
Shamim sorry, Alex.
No, that's okay. It's just a funny business, funny world to work in.
Shamim was directing episode 3, and we were talking about that scene, the restaurant scene, and she was kind of like, so what are you thinking? Like, and I was like, Shamim, I am the worst waitress you will ever know. We do not need to plan very much for how we're going to make this terrible. I will blow this out of the water. Like, it was so bad. And then we get on set, and she's like, okay, can you just look a little bit more awkward carrying the tray of matcha? And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. And then we start doing the take. I ran into the counter and spilled 4, like, extra large matcha lattes on the floor. And, like, all over the cafe. Like, they had to move all the camera equipment, all the furniture, clean the whole set. And then, so that was, I didn't mean to, of course, spill those things because that took up a whole bunch of time. But, I'm a horrible waitress.
You were method acting, Sadie.
Yeah, I'm lucky that that's kind of not a current part of my life because it's just not something that I'm good at.
I feel like that's a thing that people don't really think about when you see a scene where someone makes a mess or someone spills something. That scene has to get filmed multiple times, and somebody's got to clean that up and go back to zero.
The reset on that. And I will contribute to this. I've never worked in the restaurant industry, but I have 3 kids. So yeah, I've waited, I have cooked, I have cleaned, I have done the dishes and changed diapers at the same time. So
yes,
and had happy customers.
Yeah, and they're not thankful either. Okay, the customer is always right, and the server is clearly wrong. So,
yeah. And you don't have set deck to come and reset.
No, and
you have to clean it up.
Always changes, or it's only fries and chicken strips, so it's fine.
Okay, well, shifting gears a little bit, Chyler, I do have to ask what your reaction was when you saw that Kat was going to get to meet Elijah Landry and kind of the introduction of that character.
My reaction was, obviously I was very intrigued by what that was going to look like, and being able to bring that element of the Landry origins. But I had no idea what I was getting myself into, because Stuart Hughes, who plays Elijah, is one of the most phenomenal actors I have ever worked with. I mean, for the fact that I had never met him before, but he's also like a Canadian legend. He's an icon. And so he is the most humble, lovely. The second you meet him, you feel like you've known him like your whole life. And he's gracious, he's giving, and he's phenomenally talented. But the thing that tripped me out the most was the fact that there were times that he would say something, he'd move his head in a certain way, he'd smile a certain way, say something a certain way. And I swear to God, I was looking at Jefferson, who plays Cole. It would trip me out where it was like, I'm saying this to like an icon. I'm like, dude, you have no idea how weird this is for me. But he fit right in. Like, he was just the family. And he is like the physical embodiment of someone in the 1800s in that case. Like, you put him in the costume, you have him digging in the dirt, and we're like digging up potatoes at some point. You should see me run through a potato field. Never do that. But he was in it. He hit the ground running, and he's just a lovely person to work with. But the depth and the heart and the heartache of Elijah Landry, and when you see, the beginning of, Port Haven, it's like, it's almost tangible. You know what I mean? Like, it's just something that it is an actual experience. And I know that it comes across, on the screen. And just wait until you see the rest of his performance. I'm a huge fan.
At what point were you like, when you saw that Jacob was going to be a grown man? I mean, was that something that, as you were going through season 1, that you asked yourself, like, if we find him at some point in time, have all of these years passed for him, or is he still going to be this child? I feel like a lot of the audience probably was like, oh, I hadn't even thought about finding Jacob as an adult.
I hadn't thought about it either, to be honest. Like, there was a scene in season 1, I can't remember what the episode was, but where Kat really thought that, it's right after she had walked Jacob into the house, and she runs in and she's calling out Jacob's name, and she's legitimately expecting to find little Jacob. And I had to really think about that, and even talked about it with our showrunners, Alex and Heather. And I was just like, wait a minute. Oh my God, this guy is going to be like in his early 30s. And it just, in my mind, it felt so weird. you know, and so I think it tripped me out just as much as when Kat has to start thinking about that concept this season, as much as it did her, because you can only imagine, like, if you lose somebody and you don't get them, you know, until like years later, or even, I don't want to diminish in any way, shape, or form, or downplay something, but if you were to lose a pet, say, right, and your pet is gone for a significant amount of time, that pet comes back, and that pet has been well traveled, probably dirty, definitely hungry, but there's that change. You're expecting something to always be the same, especially when, you know, it kind of has to deal with a loss or a grief or a guilt. You're always hoping you can go back to that same place to either heal it, mend it, or find some sort of like redemption in it or closure. And so, I had to really, really come to grips with that concept just as much as Kat, for sure.
It's amazing. Alex, what was your take when you first made those discoveries?
Well, very similar to Chyler as well. It's shocking because you think or believe a certain way for so long that when all of a sudden you're blindsided by something completely different, it's like you don't know how to react. It's nothing that you've ever like experienced before, so there's no response or emotion that you can pull from in your past. You know, so I only ever worked with like Remy, who played the young Jacob. So I can't even imagine having to interact with that Jacob that I know and have grown to love and was so comfortable with, and interact with him, but 20 plus years later, and still have to have that same love and same like feel that same level of loss, but yet for someone who seems to be completely different or a completely different person, it's like you're really starting from scratch and having to meet this person all over again. But at the same time, you're able to do so because part of them is still in that human somewhere. So it is a really crazy, complicated thing to wrap your head around. And I remember when I first found out, oh, we're bringing in an older version, chills. Like it was perfect. Of course he's older. Like this show is crazy. Of course he's older.
I guess, that's part of it, right? It's like already having to think about time travel and like how wild that concept is. It's like, I mean, there's it's like no holds bar. You have no idea what to expect anymore. And so you're just kind of like, he could come back as a parakeet. We don't know. You know what I mean? You're going to now be like Hedwig at your window and be like, I've got mail.
Yeah. Or a horse, right?
We've seen online, seen a lot of people saying that Jacob is the horse. So we see you.
The writers are so phenomenal, though, that they would find a way to make it make sense. Like they would actually believe that
a horse.
He's 100% a horse. They could write it. I am convinced.
Well, was anyone else convinced that the horse was time traveling?
Yeah, that's
I didn't even. I kind of like. I think, you know, something they're introducing this season is like the idea that Dell is looking for ways to stay connected to Colton, and that she has these like Elliot kind of suggests that she maybe thinks about Colton and thinks about what he would tell her to do, and kind of like, you know, in that sweet way that when she's alone, she finds these moments to say like, what would you do, Cole, or what would you tell me to do? And then we see them together, almost as if they had been able to grow old together. And I think like there's kind of the story of Colton really wanting to like make that horse happen for Dell. And so like I think there was always kind of a thread for me of like, what does this horse have to do with that? And so I was kind of like, is she kind of like seeing the horse and it's bringing her comfort because it feels as though Colton, it's kind of in that world of like people are starting to cross over with the people that they've lost, or like the younger versions of themselves. Like we see Elliot see Colton at the fire and he says, you know, carpe diem, you know, tell her that you're into her, tell her today, tell her before she goes to camp, like whatever, those things. And so there was a part of me that was like, is the horse kind of in that world of these kind of like flashback, but also they're more than that. They're more than a flashback. They're kind of like putting those characters in a position
called,
where they could almost have.
When
When
we were talking about the start of this season, because we really were implementing a lot of different concepts, having to build, 1814 in and of itself there's a lot that went into it. Things that we were doing when it came to building something like that was very intentional. And you have to think really hard when you're on the creative side of the show, because you have to keep all of these pieces together to make sure that there's a through line. It's like having, the pond has its rules. It'll take you where you need to go. And so we had to really kind of almost make like this little teeny tiny like Bible for this season, where we would say there's the echoes, which are like what we saw when Teen Cat is in like in episode 3, when you see Teen Cat and Teen Elliot on that bench and they're having that conversation, and adult Cat walks into it, that where it's got that kind of like goldeny sort of light, is what we were considering an echo, because it's an echo of the past, right? And so what we were came up with for those moments where the fact that Del sees Colton as where she is in 2023, 24, I don't remember where we were at that point, but it almost seemed like it was called them figments, because it's like, it's when you need something and there's someone that would be there for you no matter what, even if they can be. It's almost like you're manifesting them into that moment. So when that happens, it's her saying, Cole, I don't know what to do. And there he is, he shows up. So it's like that part of her that remembers the best of him and remembers the fact that this is a man who she's madly in love with. And was always part of every, obviously process and everything that they went through, the love, the joy, the grief. So she still relies on him. But, again, it's like the way home. It's like, what? Like, none of it makes any sense. None of it makes any sense. But so
that's kind of like the nice version of it, but Alice has kind of like the haunting version at the beginning of the season, where she's at the fire and she sees she sees Teen Cat and she sees Teen Elliot and she sees Teen Nick, and they're like standing across they're not, Teen Elliot is giving her like a death glare. There's that figment, and then there's kind of the figment of the three of them like clapping and cheering for her, and it was crazy shooting that, because it was like we were reliving the shoot from the year before, but I wasn't in any of the shots that Alex and David and Sam were in. So I really felt like it was kind of meta. Like I was going through what Alice was going through, of like, I want to hang out with these people so bad, but I can't, I never will, or you know what I mean? So there's kind of the scary version of the figments too, that make you long for moments that have passed, that or people that are not in your life that you might pop up, and it might make you have some sort of reaction, like she goes running off from this party that she's been looking forward to, and she's being haunted by the time travel experiences. And I don't know, it's kind of there's these new things that we're introducing to this season that I think people will get a lot of what they're expecting, but they'll also get some things that they never thought we would do.
Well, speaking of all of those layers and kind of ways of time traveling, even without time traveling, I've been eager to ask you, Sadie, about Alice reading the Alice in Wonderland book and what we're kind of supposed to glean from that.
I think, first season we had Alice in Wonderland, where she falls down the rabbit hole of time travel. She literally falls into the pond. Thank you to our beautiful stunt team. And then she falls down the rabbit hole of time travel. And then I think this season she's presented with Alice through the looking glass. Del finds it at that estate sale at Lingermore and gives it to her. And I think, through the looking glass, everything's upside down. Everything's not as it seems. Everything is strange and a weird version of something you thought you knew. And I think Elliot kind of gives us the first clear picture of that when Alice kind of says, what the heck is your problem? Like, if I go back, like, why do you keep challenging me on this one? Like, just tell me what's going on. And he gives her this very ominous warning of, like, you know, those teens that you've, you know, grown to know and love are not, they won't be like that forever, and things are going to change, and I can't stop you. And you know, because she's like, why won't you stop me? And he's like, I can't. You know, what happens will always happen, which Alice knows it can actually mean that something terrible has happened, and it will always happen. You know, she learned that the hard way with Colton's death, with Jacob's disappearance. And so I think it means more to her now. And so I think, yeah, the looking glass, life is warped, life is being turned upside down. And I think that happens to more than just Alice in this season. So
certainly, I mean, it happens to Kat with the discovery of those Polaroids.
Yeah,
I have so many questions about the Polaroids, because you found them. It was Jacob's desk, and there aren't, as far as I know, there's not a color Polaroid camera existing in 1814. So where are those coming from?
I can't tell you. I can't tell you.
Okay.
But it was super awkward having to talk about having to do something on purpose, not on purpose, where I had to drop that frame.
oh my God, it was so good though.
In it.
I was so convinced.
I only had so many shots because we only had so many breakaway, like, glass frames. And so it's like, I don't know. It was final. That must have been the last one, the last take that I did, that I actually made it happen correctly. Yeah.
Okay. So for freaks like me, should we be pausing and, like, studying those individual shots of the pond? Like, are there Easter eggs hiding in those images?
Well, I can't tell you anyway. I'd say do it.
I won't ask you what they are.
I think with this show, you might as well. With our show, you might as well.
Exactly.
I think our writers are very, very detail oriented, and there's always going to be things.
As are our fans.
Yes. And so I think if you're a fan of the show, you're used to the idea of, like, pause it. Look
Taylor
around,
Swift trained us well. We know how to look for these clues.
That's right.
Exactly.
So we talked a little bit about the horse, but I am loving Del's kind of journey this season with that moment with the horse. I feel like she's kind of finding herself anew. Like, now that these relationships with Kat and with Alice have kind of reached a more settled place, she's focusing more inward. What do you like, Alex? What's your take on that? Especially when you see Andy just crush every scene, it's like she breaks your heart and also gives you hope somehow with the blink of an eye.
Yeah, well, I mean, Andy's incredible. I worked so closely with her in the first season because, of course, the mother-daughter dynamic. And this season, too, there's some scenes where I give her an earful. And it's just so heartbreaking, because I would never speak to my own mother like that. And yet Kat's gone through the ringer, and we know that. And yes, there are things that you just need to get off your chest. And unfortunately, Del had to get the most of it. So she was great, always lovely to work with. But I mean, you're totally right that Del is finally, I think, dedicating this time to herself. And you didn't see much of that in the first season, because she was so maternal and selfless and really caring about mending relationships or trying to, close what happened in the past and move forward. And there were just so many things happening that she really didn't have much time to focus inward, as you said. Mm-hmm. And so being able to see her, like, explore some of those areas that have gone untouched for so long, like her relationships and her love life, it's really exciting. And you'd be excited for anyone who's exploring love for the first time in so long. So I love that plot line for her.
Well, speaking of love, it was Valentine's Day yesterday. So I think we should talk about, like, Del got maybe a new love interest. Alice maybe got a new love interest or two. What pairing do each of you want to see more of? And I mean romantically, but they may not be romantic yet at this moment. And Sadie, I'm going to start with you.
Oh my gosh.
Which
I think
pairing
okay.
are you shipping as the kid?
Okay, speaking as Alice, I don't think she's like, I think that she just wants to go back to the 90s and just like never go back through the pond and just stay there and like live with the 90s team and just like get to be like, what would happen if I didn't have to ruin my first love by like going back through the time traveling pond and never seeing him again? So I think there's a part of Alice that would be like, Alice and Nick forever. Not realistic. I think that it would be good for her to find someone in the present. I think if she's interested in Noah, the most popular guy at school, she probably shouldn't be so rude because she did not start that interaction very well. So I'm kind of like I'm Team Alice, but I'm also like, girl, what were you doing? Because that's the kind of spiky side of her that I think we were talking about earlier. I think that she has some present day relationship things to deal with. And one of those things is like just be nice to cute boys. What the heck?
Well, I will just say I think there's bravery in this spikiness because it is being your true self and it is letting it out.
I like that. Thank you.
So I think that's part of why people love and relate to Alice is that kind of innate genuineness that she kind of puts out.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Alex, which pairing do you want to see more of?
Yeah, this is such a teen cat response, but I know Sadie was very girl power. I just want to focus on myself. I feel like the Alice Nick had such a good thing going in season 1 that of course we know that it's, unsustainable. It's not going to last forever. But from a teen cat's perspective, like they never got closure. I'm just so curious about is it just going to drop off and she'll never speak to him again? And I feel like there's so many unanswered questions in that sense too. So from a teen cat perspective, I want my girl to figure that out.
Aww,
so cute.
Aww. Chyler, what about you?
I'm not saying anything.
I think that's probably the right move.
I know. Yeah. I will say this though. I will always be team Calliot.
Yeah.
Like I love the two of them so much. But I kind of have to also echo the same thing because I do wish that Alice and Teen Nick could have had a little bit more time because the chemistry was fire. And he's such a lovely guy. Like he really is. He's so funny. He's got that like California dreamy kind of vibe to him. And though it's weird because when we do see like adult Nick, it's like, what? Like Mama says no. Mama says legal. That's what Mommy says. So I'm like, yeah, maybe these women need to like find themselves a little bit more before they need to worry about, being found. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay, I want to play a silly little game. And actually, Sadie, you've brought it up now multiple times. But as I was prepping for this, I somehow wound up rewinding and getting like it immediately starting with the Elliot line. Everything you knew about who those kids once were is going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are watching that scene without context, when you just jump right into it, it's so ominous and kind of outside of the character and also just kind of outside of Evan's kind of general bubbliness. So I want each of you to take a stab at the line being very serious, overacting, ridiculous. Everything you knew about who those kids once were is going to change.
Okay, I'm going to go.
Go.
Okay.
Everything you knew about who those kids once were is going to change.
Ooh.
like the zoom.
I wanted to do the camera move too because I just watched it again and I was like, it's so dramatic.
I know that
dramatic.
cushion.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
He does a beautiful job. I'm mocking him, I swear. But
No,
when you
not mocking.
kind of come in
truly.
right in that moment, it's kind of funny.
Okay, I got it. Wait. Shh. Being serious.
Okay.
Everything you knew about who those kids once were is gonna change.
You bailed halfway through.
Oh, it was great. It was great. Alex, the bar's high. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh boy.
You would just do it well because you're just so talented, but
Oh. Okay. Everything you knew about who those kids once were is going to change.
Oh, emphasis on is.
I
love that.
Emphasis on is.
Yeah.
It is going to change.
Can you put a little more on the next time?
Yeah.
I just don't think you got the point across.
Sadie, are you fluent in French?
Oui.
Can you say that in French?
I say that in French. I don't think I actually can translate that very well. My French grammar is really bad. I think, that would not, I don't think that would be something I could get right. And I think I'd get trolled if I tried.
Okay, that's fair.
Like, I could do a really bad version, but I just don't want to get bullied for my French.
That's fair.
Fair.
So,
Totally. So,
I have to
but
pick my piece on this one.
in actual seriousness, that seems really telling. Is that the first time that Alice kind of joins Elliot in knowing something about her future?
Yes.
Because that is the
my
moment
God.
where she's like, him mentioning the pact is telling her about a pact that she hasn't yet made.
Yes, you're totally onto something. I think their experience ends up being kind of different in that Alice doesn't try and hide anything from Elliot in the past. When she goes back and she sees Tina Elliott, she's just like, blah, 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 and this happens and that happens. She just like does not care how that's going to impact him. So I think we'll have to see what she'll do knowing how hard that was on him and how the people around her will what they'll do with their information because they've lived through that. So that's all I'll say.
All right.
Well
I feel like they're at odds, but ultimately are going to come out of it more connected than ever.
I hope so.
I do too. All right. Before we go, we've got to do some teases for this episode on Sunday. So can each of you give me a 3-word tease of what to expect in this next episode? And Alex, I'm going to make you go first.
Oh my God. I'm going to say test of love.
Ooh.
Okay.
Chyler?
Going to change.
You need the push in.
I know, I didn't get the push in.
Yeah.
Going to change.
Sadie?
Mine is going to be music, romance, secrets.
Ooh.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you everyone for tuning in. You will get to learn what some of those secrets are on Sunday at 9/8 Central on Hallmark Channel for the new episode of The Way Home, which will be streaming the next day on Hallmark Movies Now. Join the chat with the hashtag The Way Home. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.